Hello, it's February 2024, and the topic of this video is something that everyone's going to be able to relate to. Now, I'm going to start off by sharing a part of my story that took place in Calgary, Alberta, Canada. Now, I remember when the criminal trial for the alleged charges of assaulting a police officer and obstruction were taking place, how everyone involved were pointing the fingers at each other for how it all played out. Now, despite all the evidence, I was needed to be found guilty, the evidence being of my innocence. Why did they need me to be found guilty? Because it would have been, or was, their defense for the lawsuit. Because if I was criminally found guilty, that meant that my injuries, my permanent injuries, disabling me, were my fault. And even the former senior counsel of the city of Calgary stated on record that I was innocent. We see this type of thing with finger pointing, for example, with corporations, professionals, and even in our personal lives when people are pointing the fingers, blaming someone else. Take, for example, corporations. When insurance companies won't pay out for, say, something medical or whatever, everyone points the finger, so there's no accountability. We see this type of thing, for example, with politics, very much so in politics, how you have different political parties blaming each other and ranting on, putting on this great show. That's what it is. It's a show. It's a stage. Blaming each other for whatever. We're trying to call each other out. We see this, for example, with the courts and police, abroad and domestic. A really good example of this would be the two rulings that I had mentioned in a previous video, the one in Canada and the one in the United States. And these rulings either allowed, for example, tyranny and injustice to evolve, so it becomes legal. Basically saying, hey, if you do it this way, no harm done. Or we have a ruling that is useless because it cannot be used as a precedent in future court cases. But during all this process, what we see, for example, is finger pointing. Who did what wrong? And usually, at the end of it all, it's the commoner who suffers the consequences. And this whole evolution of tyranny and injustice has always happened. As long as the appearance of justice is upheld, especially when injustice is being imposed, and that is key. So, pointing the fingers, again, we see this in our personal lives. We also see this, for example, with busybodies and glorified busybodies who make uninformed conclusions and escalating things beyond ridiculous. And then more people get dragged in, more uninformed conclusions, and at times we go beyond injustice and tyranny, and someone's life is lost because of assumptions. This finger pointing is a very, very bad thing if you haven't figured that out already. But you have to remember something. When someone points the finger, there's always going to be three pointing back at them. And just because someone points the finger doesn't mean what they're stating or alleging is factual or true. What we see in today's world more times than not, that it's not true. And then that segues into, for example, false allegations, false narratives. And I've stated before how people will latch on to the first thing they hear, especially when it comes from someone in an authoritative position. And these are the problems that we're dealing with in our society today. And finger pointing doesn't solve anything. If there is a legitimate issue, a problem, or something, rather than pointing the fingers and passing blame, you have to work the problem and solve it to either minimize, mitigate damages, or to prevent things from occurring again. Anyway, I just wanted to give you some things to think about. Thank you for watching. Please like, subscribe, comment, and share.
Listen to this and write it down if you can't remember it. You're never going to outgrow warfare. You simply must learn to fight. I hear people saying to me, oh, when is it going to get easier? When you die.